It is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Well, when we left off, we were talking about components that you can bring in to bring excitement to your game. Let's continue with that, because these are still important things we want to talk about, that you want to keep adding in those levels of excitement to keep that interest from your players at constant times. Your descriptions mean everything. A boring or uninformative bit of description can mean the difference between a character grabbing onto a scene, basically grabbing onto what's going on, or just not caring. And the fact is, this is even more important when we talk about something like combat. Those little things that you're describing in combat might make the difference between everything. Maybe something they could duck behind. If you don't mention it, they might just be out in the open getting shot. Or a certain enemy that maybe has a better gun. If you describe them all as the same, then they're not going to know which one to target. So you can see the importance of all this information being expressed to them in such a way that they understand the situation and can react to it appropriately. You should give enough information that they're going to feel satisfied once they begin whatever encounter it is. And you should answer any kind of questions they have in response to this concisely and exactly. So you sort of establish everything. You only give them the very basics they need to know. And then they might ask questions about it. Maybe if there's something blocking the way, you said there's like a big kind of box in the way, and there could be like, what kind of box is it? Well, it looks to be a wooden box, and its one side is hanging open. It looks empty. It's not as much of a boundary anymore. And this information, because you started out with the basics, they asked a question about what they saw, you responded properly to set up the situation appropriately. Add descriptions when they do actions or when enemies do actions in game too. That when you're shooting someone or shooting at someone, you add a little bit of flourish. But be careful that you don't overdo it. Too much can get boring fast, especially when it comes to combat descriptions and combats that go on for a period of time. You might actually, in this circumstance, you want to use short, concise descriptions for the basic combat and save those flourishes for the big events like finishing someone off or forcing them to retreat. The balance between these two is something important that you're going to have to use, because balancing out when the description is important and useful and then it's too much, it's extra, that's what you have to recognize. A good description helps the adventurers, helps the players, helps your heroes, doesn't harm them. That's what a good description is. You can only add harm when you're not adding that extra bits in, because they're not going to recognize it the same way. Now let's talk about another important aspect that goes along with this. Keeping up your players' excitement through pacing. Now, pacing basically is the rate that your adventure goes at. The overall rate, the average rate of it. Because there are going to be, of course, high times and low times. Times with heavy amounts of actions or combat fights are going to be much better than when you're possibly talking to someone, finding out some information. The important points of it is to keep your excitement through everything, through the roller coaster ride. You're going to want to make sure that your players don't start to become distracted, start doing other things, talking amongst themselves. When this is occurring, you're going too slow. You've dropped that pacing too much. On the other hand, if they start getting confused, asking too many questions, you're going too fast. So you see, finding that middle ground where you're not making your players not feel very excited, or basically driving away because you're confusing them and going too fast, is that important point in time. The perfect pacing that you're looking for. A good example is because there's such great communication technology. Your players could effectively split up to do something. Communicate with each other. Phone them each other back and forth. Well, how do we split between the two of these groups? Have something exciting happen. A kind of cliffhanger at the end of each of these. It's the high point leading into whatever's going on and then kind of moving back down into that lower point of resolving whatever happened once we return to them. So you kind of make this, again, the roller coaster of the anticipation for something, hitting it, excitement, anticipating the next one. And keeping that sort of feeling of the mixture between the two, balanced, is the important part of this pacing. Because you're going to need that kind of, you don't want everybody to be super excited all the time. They're going to run out of energy. You're going to want those down points of time for everybody to take a breath, regain their composure, be ready for the next one. And there is where the roller coaster comes in, and keeping it at a even, that we're not like such a ridiculous roller coaster that they're waiting way too long to go down it, or it's so exciting that they're like, what's going on? I didn't see anything. It's too much. Balance, once again, is very key. Now, another important thing is you can't have your players save the world every time. It gets boring. I mean, if the world's constantly being threatened, they're always doing it over and over again. Start small. Have your players do side missions or related missions to the overall large mission that maybe someone else is doing. Doing something like that, or start with very small type helpful missions. You start at this lower point in time, and it will reflect as your players get better, as they gain levels, as they get more experience. They feel like they're progressing from this lower, smaller, kind of small world area into the bigger missions, getting into saving the world, getting into missions that take you across the globe, bigger and better scales to reflect when your characters are getting bigger and better. So maybe when they're getting to those higher levels, they're finally saving the world. So maybe they're only going to save the world a couple of times before you reach the point where you're probably retiring those characters. And it doesn't get boring then, because you moved on this progression system of both the adventure and your players. It mimicked each other to give people a feel of the progression, not only of their physical characters, the statistics, but in the game world. Now, another important thing, of course, is your setting. Setting can help with the tone and genre of the game in so many ways. Giving a good setting can help establish that. If you're doing horror and set yourselves in Transylvania, it's going to feel like horror. Granted, it's a little cliche doing Transylvania, but that's the good example of it. Effectively, when you're choosing a setting, you could either come up with your own version of a real-world one with some kind of quirk or something that makes it unique and interesting, something a little different than that real-world version of it, or you could use something in any kind of source material. You could use a TV show, a movie, comic book, some kind of something like that that has its own unique setting, and make it your own. Make your own version of it, because if it's your own version of it, it's going to be different from that. Just like I'm taking a unique version of a real world situation, making it my own. But I'm choosing this setting so it matches my tone, it matches the genre of story I'm kind of doing, and together I'm reinforcing them with it. Now let's talk about some other little tips and tricks I can talk to you about when it comes to game mastering. Now, the important thing is, of course, you want to keep your adventurers always on their toes. You're going to want to keep up that level of excitement. The thing is, you're still going to have those up and downs I described. But overall, it should have this medium ground of an excitement level you're aiming for. There are many things you can do to this. You could have your party suddenly split up. Splitting the party can be a difficult thing to manage, but it can add a lot of excitement because, oh no, we're separated from them. What are we going to do? On the other hand, you can do something like frame them. Have them going to a location and all of a sudden, hey, someone was murdered there. You're walking in on it. You're to blame. You can see that these things tend to be used in literature or movies or TV and are a little cliche, but using them in a role-playing game is a lot more unique, because then you're having the people interact with it directly. So you can still use all these things to add this level of excitement to the gameplay, these unique effects that are keeping it up with like, we didn't expect this to happen, but it is. It's also important to use your GM characters wisely. They should feel like characters in the world. This does mean some important things like they remember either a debt they have for the players, or a debt the players had for them. So if something happens, this character will come to them and sort of rearrange to either pay the debt or collect the debt from your PCs. It's a great way of keeping them engaged in the world, to make the world feel like it's a world of adventure. It's an illusion that your world is a world of adventure. You're coming up with basically your own version of a real world. They just happen to be in the adventures. That's why it's the illusion of it. It should be important to note you should try to keep your Game Master characters honest. The thing is, you can have them lie if you want, but you should have them so good at lying, they're effectively the exact same as the honest folks. And you should only use the lying if it's important to the story. Other than that, they have no reason, and you really shouldn't add a reason for them to lie. It should only have a lie based around the story. Otherwise, just keep them honest. You don't need the players coming up with another set of, I'm suspecting everyone because you never know who's going to lie. You don't need that kind of feeling in them. Now, though, the thing is, because the characters should be so convincing, a villain could theoretically take advantage of your players because of this. And there, though, adds to the storyline and excitement, because they should be trusting of a lot of people. They should give their trust to folks, and then when it's betrayed, it's all the more bittersweet. Now, you can also add to your game, of course, with handouts and props. This can take many forms. For example, you could get a photo on a computer, alter it a little bit, print it out, this printed out copy of a photo, and guess what? Those little alterations, little things you did, now this is your GM character you were making. You just made a photo of him to show everybody. Now they know what this person looks like in their minds because you've come up with a version of them. And it's usually pretty easy to make little alterations on a picture of someone, so you can come up with something easily with that. You could also come up with a letter. If they get a physical piece of paper that they find in-game, make them a physical piece of paper. Or if it's a computer file, you can send one to someone's laptop or phone. Guess what? Now they have a copy of this file, like a Word document or something, that they can look at. You could even do something like, if they get some kind of storage device with information on it, with a clue on it, you could give them a blank DVD or a blank thumb drive. Or if you're going a little more old school, something like an old CD, video cassette, or floppy disk. Whichever way you go, you're effectively giving them something physical to feel, to look at. There's nothing on there. It's nothing that they can put into a machine and check it out. But they feel like it's something they're actually receiving then. So you've added to their immersion using these props. They're understanding it more. They're visualizing it much better than if you're just describing it to them. But that's it for today. I went over a couple important things. I finished up talking about the things you can do to add excitement to the game. The descriptions you can add to add enough flavor to them to not overload your characters, but to intrigue them. The pacing that you're going to take. The mid-ground of the ups and downs of the adventure that you reach in such a play that keeps your people's adventurous, your players' interest the entire time. And of course I did talk about the setting you can set up, making sure that's established, and making sure your players aren't heroes all the time. Make them appropriate to whatever level they are, so they don't feel like they're saving the world constantly. Then I dove into some more tips and tricks. I just went over a couple of basics. And of course I talked about props you can use, which do add a level of excitement, of immersion to your character. In the next episode, I'm going to finish up some other tips and tricks. I'm going to talk about those locations you're going to use. And then I'm going to talk about rewards that you're going to be giving out. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows you for the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.